Welcome, folks, to the 8th of May Aries Working Group call. Uh, Glad you're here. Thanks to Stephen for running last week while I was off. This is a Hyperledger call, so the interest policy and the code of conduct are in effect. Links in the wiki. Please raise issues if you see them, so we can keep our community healthy. You're welcome to add yourself to the attendees list. Although it won't update live because of the live edit issue, but it'll help people connect with you, etc. Anyone new here today that would like to introduce themselves? I'm glad you're all returning. Any announcements we should have on the list but don't?
We should add probably that Akapai 0.11.1, a patch release, was released because of an AIO HTTP CVE. I guess that's not an announcement. Sorry, that's a work update.
Jumping the gun there, Steve.
Jumping the gun. Sorry about that.
No. But yes, let's get to that in a second. Any other announcements? I will mention that if this was yesterday, not today, but there was a Indicio testnet had its annual reset. If that's annoying because you are running demos on it, you should be running demos on the demo net. So if you had a hard day yesterday and you want to know how to run stuff on the demo net instead, then please reach out. We can help you do that. Testnet's designed for stuff that's like ephemeral and you're just cycling over and over, and so resetting it is convenient for that purpose, but not for demos, which is why we have a separate net for that. Any other announcements? All right, Steve, you can go with the update.
All right. Yeah, so 0.11.1 is a pure patch release just to upgrade the version of AIO HTTP. That's the only change in it. We just did it so that that CVE can be addressed. It's already addressed in the 12.1 release, so we didn't have to do anything for that, but we did want to catch up on make sure that got put into a release in case for those on 11 still. Interesting bug. You put in a payload crafted in a certain way, and the app or the library goes into an infinite loop. So becomes an easy way to do a denial of service. So there you go.
That's handy.
Mm-hmm.
For all of your infinite loop needs. Cool. Other release status and work updates. Okay. Discussion topics that I have for today. There's a decent chance we'll have room for open discussion today. So if you've been wanting to talk about something and it hasn't made the agenda, then here's a real good chance for that. I was looking for Timo and Patrick, but I don't see either of them again on the VC DI attachment.
It is Patrick with a C.
Is it the wrong Patrick? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it's that. It's the other Patrick. Patrick St. Louis.
Okay. I apologize for confusing the Patricks. Thanks for that. Okay, we will look out for them in the future. I should reach out and invite them so that we can have that discussion and move it along. The other one that I need to invite along is there's a trust input protocol the Northern Bloc proposed that's we need to move along, and so that's the other one that I should reach out to sort of spur some conversation on. So yes, okay, we will likely not, unless anyone has any comments about that, discuss that further today. All right. Unqualified did transition here. Here is the RFC under discussion, and there's been a lot of work happening, but we have not actually adjusted dates. And so we are still in phase one where we're adding support for did rotation and did peer 4. So we have the date for code update and deployment, and these are late. So my question is can we actually like update these dates, and we can discuss good ones here today, and then get them updated to keep the community coordinator updated with the current timeline. I think code updates are pretty darn close, right, Stephen?
Yeah.
This is in
Um,
Akapai already.
all of these are in Akapai and Credo. In fact, I think we've got an interesting situation. I don't know if you want to talk about it here, but did Indy handling is jumped a bit ahead from what anyone planned, and I'm not quite sure where it happened, but it looks like we're getting errors in bifold slash and BC Wallet where um, unqualified and non-cred objects are being rejected because the expectation is that a did Indy um, will be used, um, which could be fine. It's just it's got to be handled a bit. So it looks like we're going to do some retroactive handling of that. But so it's related to unqualified DIDs and the legacy and on-creds objects.
Um,
Unqualified and non-creds objects, yeah.
yeah, there you go. Okay, so we could probably just call this good and give us a date. Let's say the first of this month, since that's been happening. Any
Hmm.
objections to just setting to backdating it a week?
Nope.
So deployments now, with this goal is that we have the deployments completed and everything's actually like rolled out. This will take a little bit. Any suggestions on a date that we should use here? Giving us a month, 3 weeks, I guess. Is that too soon to get everything deployed and updated? I guess I should spell 4 correctly. Is that incorrectly spelled here? Nice. Well, we'll get that fixed in this part of this update. Let's let's do, let's see.
I'd say two.
What's that?
I'd say
Two.
2 months.
You say 2 months? I was gonna
Yeah.
say 6 weeks. 2 months is safer. So
Yeah.
let's do '07 and then just to intelligently pick a date. So that's July, right? May. No, so it's May, June. It'd be the beginning part of July.
Yeah.
Let's say July 2nd. So it's a Tuesday. Is the new target for deployment of phase one. What that does, as a reminder, is that everyone has this done, and we can begin phase two, which means that we stop using the unqualified DIDs because now we have everything managed to did peer 4, and you can use did rotations to rotate to that. Um, and so that's there, and I will, and we'll have we'll have a target for when that's actually complete, but that one's a lot softer than this milestone that we're trying to pass here. And so with that, we should be able to then call unqualified DIDs gone and no longer in use in the community, and no longer expected to maintain support for them once we sort of cross that line for compatibility. So there's more dates to discuss there. The work's been awesome and it's been good. So let's get this deployed. Any objections or commentary on the new dates? I'll have a PR to the RFC with these new dates then. Okay. Did any handling? Is there more to say about that, Stephen, or was that it?
Um, just the only thing I'm not sure of is, so did Indy, it's a little bit subtle. Did Indy changes uh the unique identifier within um the did, and so the way you generate that, but um the way you but resolving it so we had put off until we could generate that unique identifier properly. um we put that off until did indie networks were updated, which has taken forever. um but it turns out you can resolve it either way and it should work. So um what's happening, I think, is in Credo. I think that the did indie format of the did is being used. And so when it gets one that's in legacy format, it says, I don't know what this is. And that was unexpected. And so code changes haven't been made to do with that. So that what's got to happen is when you get I think in bifold and in the wallets, if you get an unqualified or a legacy format indie reference, you have to, and it fails, you have to redo it with in the did indie style, and it probably will work. But exactly where to put that is sort of still being sorted out. So we're sort of being rushed into a change, an unexpected change. Not a bad one, but because it is to do, it winds up being qualified, and even better, it includes the network that the thing resides on.
Right. So no
Um,
longer do you need to hunt through networks to resolve it if that was a feature
yeah,
you
so in
supported.
theory, we move forward that problem, but it's sort of unexpected, so we don't quite know where to put the fix. Wade King from the BC Wallet team has a fix in a non-creds, which I'm not quite sure how that fixes it, because an on-creds doesn't resolve things. It only processes resolved objects. So I'm not quite sure how that fixes it, but it does fix it for the cases that he's run across. I think it's going to take a bit of sorting out to figure out exactly where to put the fix, the temporary fix. So there's a PR in an on-creds RS that I can find.
My gut, Steven, says to put the fix in Credo itself, given that that's where we're attempting to do the resolving, and that's also where we're doing our multi-ledger reads configuration.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's the initial fix could be in Credo. Ultimately, we want to move to did India everywhere, right? We
Yeah.
haven't
And
discussed a timeline for that in the community, mostly because of the network ledger rollout issue. But that could, now that that's been rolled out, to my understanding, then
yeah.
then we could push that as a useful bit there, right?
So the interesting question, Sam, is, and this hadn't occurred to me, and this probably could have helped us years ago to figure this out, is that although did Indy requires a unique identifier, and therefore the rolling out of new Indy node code to make sure it's acceptable and so on, that subtle change in how we generate that unique identifier probably shouldn't have been made. But B, once it's created, resolving it could use either one. And did any would work fine. So if we accept that if you try to resolve it either way, it works, that would have been way better.
Kind of like the
Even
way our community coordinated update works, where you can accept the old and the new.
what, but
Somehow, the,
yeah, the more subtle thing here is the new, accepting the new one isn't quite right because the unique identifier within it does not align to the did indie spec. That's what's weird about it.
right.
That's what makes it and made, I don't know, threw us off in not doing it. Um, anyway, somebody doing
Yeah.
a drive-by review of the spec is the one that suggested, hey, we should change how this is generated so we have a better algorithm. And we said, yeah, better algorithm was the right thing to do, but oh man,
There
in
is
retro,
additional headache, right?
yeah,
We are usually smarter in retrospect.
yeah, and
Thankfully.
I don't even think that person ever showed up again. It's my memory. I don't know. I gotta have to go look at it again. But anyway,
Okay. So, so that's already in process. This is more of a status update, or is there things we need to
that's
figure
more a
out?
status update because it's breaking things. This is breaking stuff, and it needs to get fixed. So it's gonna get resolved.
Okay.
Um, it's just I just wanted to make people aware of it.
Cool. Okay. All right. Anything else about unqualified dids? Please circulate the new target date and raise concerns if there are, and try to align deployment dates and stuff so that we can make that happen as a community. This is one of those annoying things as a community that we've all got to work on together to move past and forget older things that we should have fixed a long time ago. So we have done this in the past. It's worked. And it just requires us to continually coordinate about it. So that's my final comment on unqualified dids. So the other thing that I wanted to bring up was DidCon v2 adoption. We had some really good discussion last week about initial attempts to do that inside of Akapai. I know there's a handful of other projects that actually either started natively DidCon v2 or have made substantial progress since then. Verimo is one of those projects, not within Aries, but that exist in the ecosystem that use DidCon that just went straight for DidCon v2. But are there any other updates for packages that are being updated to use DidCom v2? I thought I heard something about Credo already being there. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true, but unfortunately, we didn't have enough time lately to continue working on that. We are not so far from that, but yeah, we will have to just to get some time to implement it, right?
Okay, that's a good update. We, as a community, need the unqualified dids thing put to rest because of the issues that we have there. That's a driving factor. And then DidCom v2 adoption, comes really, really quick on top of that. Um, any other projects that folks are aware of and can report on? Okay. The other thing that I'll mention is the DidCom users group over at the diff has a series of themes, one per month. This last one has been on advanced messaging. The next one, or I don't know if it's next, but another one to be talked about is to work out push notifications. And there's some pretty good ideas, including just a webhook style push notification, which allows you to configure whatever push notification service you need, and supplement that one small piece in that allows for mediators to be able to support push notification for parties that do that. So that's under discussion over there, which is good stuff. Anything else about DidCon v2 adoption? All right, we're at the open discussion portion of our meeting today. What issues would folks like to discuss? Daniel's got his hand up.
So I've got a fun one that just came up recently. This is more maybe just notifying people as opposed to like an actual discussion topic. But we've been doing some testing recently, and we are finding that the JSON-LD credentials implementation within ACPI is no longer compatible with the JSON-LD implementation within Credo 050. I'm not sure if that's recent or if there were incompatibility issues before 050. But there's definitely incompatibility issues for that particular version. I think something to do with the Spherion library being used for the presentation exchange objects, presentation exchange as in the diff presentation exchange spec. I believe Spherion is not expecting quite the same things, and things like the domain of the proof, or there's also some additional fields that are being added to the proof. So I'm out of necessity because we need this to be working. I'm going to be setting up some testing environments and figuring out what's going on there, I guess. And I will report back to the community. So yeah, that was a fun surprise. We thought that was working, and it turns out it's not. So.
Yeah, we received some messages on the Discord channel in Credo regarding this. I don't know if it's related from I mean from other people probably regarding some incompatibility recently with Credo 05. So we will need to check what's going on on the Spherion library.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have like an error message from ACPI, but I'm not sure which side is responsible for it just yet. So as I get a easy to reproduce example of what's going on in that, yeah, like I said, I'll report my findings, I guess, and maybe I'll open some issues in ACPI and Credo and report what I discover in that process.
Any questions, other comments, thoughts? Daniel, thanks for chasing that. We'll look forward to an update. James, I briefly saw your hand. Was that unrelated or related?
Unrelated. Related to the unqualified DIDs transition, I was wondering, did we want to update the transition out of band and DID exchange protocols? It feels a whole lot less urgent, but I think that's because we've mostly done it.
So that's a good point. I forget the number of that. Do you happen to have that off the top of your head?
496.
496. How does this not work? Oh, 496? There we go. So this one we started and then kind of didn't get there. That's a good point. And we might just be able to retroactively declare dates on this.
So I wouldn't quite as optimistically say that we've already done this actually, because only as of like very recently has like ACPI and Credo been able to do out of band and DID exchange together. And all connections that were being formed between ACPI and Credo-based agents were using connections up until that point. So I think this is actually more of a presence issue than it might seem on the surface.
Okay. So step one here is that we update to accept incoming out-of-band messages rather than the non-out-of-band step inside of connections, right? So that's and then the step two is we stop, we accept the new one. Step two is we stop using the connections protocol invitation message. Are there uses of the connection protocol invitation message still in play? You mentioned, Daniel, that it's pretty recent that was able to work between Credo and ACPI.
Yeah, I think nearly all connections that were being formed between ACPI and mobile agents up until very recently has still been connections protocol based.
Okay. Um, so the community action item here is to confirm that step one, meaning everything is capable of accepting out-of-band invitations, even if you still only support the connections protocol, has been completed. And so once we've done that, then we can actually switch over to only using out-of-band and not using the connections invitations anymore. A separate thing is did exchange itself. Um, and I believe I'm scraping the back of my brain here a little bit. So I think we called this out of band and did exchange, but it came down to just supporting out of band, because then if you receive an out of band message, it indicates which handshaking protocol you're actually capable of supporting, which means that you can sort of then discover what's happening there. And it might be that the deprecation of the connections protocol formally is like something we need to coordinate, depending on how things are going. But did exchange is a much cleaner way of doing it there. Solves a handful of issues that were discovered in connections. So if you, we'll revisit this. If you please check any implementations that you're using to see whether they're capable of accepting out-of-band invitations or not. And that one step allows us to move forward in a really useful way on this and formally kill connection invitations, which is really important for scanning of QR codes. So here's community homework.
To your point that you had made, Daniel, to clarify, from what you were saying from your experiences, that was it that the mobile agents were primarily using connection invitations to connect, or they were primarily recently using out of band invitations but using the connection protocol for the handshake process?
I'm not 100% sure. I know that the connections protocol was definitely used for the handshake.
Yeah.
So of that, I am certain. And I think, at least in some instances, I'm aware of connections invitations were also still in use. But yeah, I don't know for sure whether out of band was at play at all.
I know Bifold for sure uses out of band invitations with the connections protocol as the handshake. So to clarify, it's using an out of band invitation, but the handshake protocol is specified
Oh,
in connection.
I think that's still satisfies this. Okay, yeah. I said that wrong.
So I'm not sure if that means that it's using connections completely as defined here, or
If it's using out of band, that's what we needed. So, yes. And then yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the part that I think might might be missing is being able to do or until recently wasn't working was the did exchange between Akapai and Credo. If that's, I believe that's what you were communicating, Daniel.
So out of band was used, but not did exchange.
Yes.
So, and again, this is mostly a title error, and it was a transition to out of band. And I believe we excluded the use of that's funny because this is now really old just because of how long it's been.
At least in the first block of step 2, it says, and agent builders add full out of band and did exchange protocol to support to all agent code bases and deployments.
It does say that, doesn't it?
But I do think that you're correct that out of band is the most important part because it offers the flexibility there.
And the discovery of
exactly
whether that's capable or not. So in this case, we might be able to call ourselves done with step 1, but not yet with step 2. Just so that we fully move off of connections and move to did exchange. So and so in this case, bifold would be compliant with step 1, but not with step 2.
That's correct.
Okay,
So
that's
it's not
perfect.
able to use did exchange right now, and I don't know if that is a credo thing, if it's a credo thing or it's a bifold thing, but that's something we have to investigate.
Okay, yeah, take a look and let's revisit this. I think with a little bit of work, we may be able to declare ourselves past step 1. And then step 2 is the next thing that we focus on to make sure that did exchange gets implemented across the board, which is really helpful there. Awesome. James, that's a great suggestion to go back and follow up and make sure that we nail this down. Cool. Other discussion topics?
You bring up the topic, brief conversation we had the other day on Indy, Sam, on defining a protocol for fetching VDR content via a proxy. So a DIDCOM protocol, yeah.
Yeah, so this would basically allow you to say, yeah, I'll fetch content for you, and then someone else could say, great, fetch me this. One of the uses for it is you could stick this support for this protocol on something that is public already, say a mediator, and that way you could sort of get 2-for-1 support. And this is the corporate firewall issue. To bring this back to memory, we've discovered a handful of protocols that are of corporate firewalls that do not like the Indy Ledger access ports and protocols, and so they'll block them, which means that now you have mobile agents that are incapable of retrieving Ledger assets directly. And so defining a protocol for fetching that VDR content and then providing it means that if as long as you can send a DIDCOM message to that party and trust it, then the mobile device can then retrieve necessary Ledger assets in a convenient way. And as mentioned, there's nothing stopping a mediator from implementing the same protocols for the support of mobile apps within a deployment.
So I would take off the term Indy on those because we're actually thinking of using that for other purposes, other ledgers, or other VDRs as well.
Yeah, I mean, as long as I don't know how widely varied the content is, but if you have sort of like registered things like here's a protocol that can support VDR content, it specifies I need something from Indy, and then here's the address for it.
Yeah,
that could work. It would be interesting now that I think about that to add the ability to do did resolved content. We're just referring back to our did Indy stuff. In the sense that you could either specify, hey, here's an identifier that works on Indy, but also like here's just a did Indy identifier that then it should be able to manage because of the did resolution there.
So Clesio in defining requirements for this included the ability to send batch requests. So
I love that.
send an array of essentially did URLs and be able to get all of them back. And then thinking about where caching goes with that, one would assume there's multiple layers caching could be done there. So thinking about that.
Yeah, we'll need to make sure that the spec or that the protocol allows for caching but doesn't necessarily require it, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that way it can be done either way. That's good.
yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So our next thought was to do a pass through that. The DIT RPC or the DRPC protocol is probably not the right one to use for it. But the request response handling is pretty much identical, so that's good. We've got a good one to go to use as the basis of it. The implementation obviously is different. We want the if we add this to Akapi, for example, we want the Akapi to handle the resolution directly. We don't want to pass it to a controller or anything like that. So it would be a plugin starting from maybe
Right.
with roughly the same skeleton as the DIT RPC one or the DRPC one.
Right. Cool.
Oh, interesting. Daniel Bloom's comments.
Yeah, we did a plugin that implemented, at least did resolution. That was like 2 or 3 years ago. The plugins never really became widely used, and I think it's out of date right now. Not updated to work with most recent version of Akapi.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would actually take much to update it if you were interested.
Yeah.
Hey, was that based off of the DID resolution protocol that Marcus designed?
Yes.
Forever
In
ago?
fact, we collaborated with Marcus on the plugin. And at least for a time, it was available as an interface for using the universal resolver over DIDCOM. I'm not sure if that's still a thing or not, but yeah.
When we did the plugins repo, did you mention that one as a one that we might be interested in?
I did, yes. I opened an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it currently lives in a SIGPA repository, but they've expressed interest in being able to move that plugin to the Akapi plugins repo.
So is it different enough between DIDs and ledger assets generally that we might want two separate things and not combine them? Or does it make sense to kind of combine them?
That's a fair question. I don't know the answer to.
For our use of other ones, we would want ledger assets. I don't know whether you'd want one that's DID only and one that's DID plus assets.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
The one
Okay.
it obviously needs assets. Yeah.
Yes. Akif, your hand's up.
Sorry, pardon me for the question, but I was just curious how this is supposed to help resolve the issue with firewalls. Could you please explain that again?
Oh, yeah. So the idea is that you don't have these apps don't have any problem talking to over DIDCOM to somebody like a mediator or any other party, but the ports and protocols used to access the Indie ledger are being blocked at the corporate firewall level.
Okay.
And so the idea is if you could just send a DIDCOM message to another party, you're capable of sending DIDCOM messages already, then the other party can do the ledger access outside the firewall and return you the assets.
Right. Okay. I remember this discussion now.
Yeah.
Proxying the request out. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and when it happened, I remember like, oh crap! Well, like none of us even imagined ledger access being blocked at the corporate firewall level. It hadn't occurred to any of us before it actually occurred,
Right.
and so that was one of those annoying surprises.
And I remember that there was discussion about using the mediator to do that kind of stuff, but then this works too.
You could still technically use the mediator to do this, but by defining it as a separate DIDCOM protocol, it unbundles it from the mediator in the sense that mediators don't have to do this, but they still can. Or you could have some other party that was doing this and that would be fine too. So I really like this approach because it kind of gets all the same advantages, but without sort of tightly bundling the concepts of a mediator doing the ledger assets by sort of architectural design.
Right. That makes
Of,
sense.
of course, you could have an agent that supports the mediation protocols and acts as a mediator and supports this protocol to retrieve ledger assets, or frankly resolve DIDs, right? And that might be really convenient in a lot of cases, but then the components are independent, if you will, just happen to be running on the same agent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So props to Stephen for that design.
Sam, do you think that it will, because we had discussed the possibility of putting these in front of the, for instance, you could have the individual or the organizations that run nodes also host one of these servers, for instance, that would be able to give you back uh, ledger related assets. That way it's going more direct to the source. Do you think that's a good idea, and or coupling that with the ledger itself?
So I do, but with an asterisk. The good news is that the protocol Stephen's talking about creating would work regardless of where it's actually hosted, which is a really great design. The second issue is that we've discussed the complexity of updating the nodes themselves, mostly for performance consideration reasons. But what we have um, discussed is that a read replica of a ledger, which doesn't have the same speed considerations and is therefore easier to update, could actually host this protocol, and you could have sort of the ledger officially recognized read replicas. And those supporting this protocol would also be a great design. The thing that I like about defining a protocol that could be run on another agent, say a mediator, is it puts the control of the speed of deployment of this issue in the hands of the people that most likely have the problem. And so there isn't anything wrong with doing it this way, and then later on adding sort of native support to officially ledger recognized read replicas to do the same thing, and that would also just be okay. And so I still like that plan, but this is one that can actually be designed and executed relatively fast, and then people that don't have this particular concern just don't have to worry about it. So this doesn't this solution, what Steven's talking about, does not preclude and actually supports the other one. But because of the locus of deployment, it changes the ability to move at a particular speed.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and good to hear that the native level that approach is still on the table, even if we want to do something faster and sooner, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, again, credit to Steven for that design and scoping of it. Cool. Okay. Any other open discussion items? We've touched on. I like to do these periodically. It's not always entirely because I didn't have enough time to put together a larger agenda, but I figure if we don't ever have these, then issues never bubble to the surface. And so I love having just open air time that we can bring stuff up. So excellent job, team. We're doing a good job here bringing up stuff that needs to be discussed. Other issues? I had one on my brain and then I forgot it.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jorge. If I may, I have a protocol RFC to share. Would it be okay to discuss?
Yeah. Let me pass you the screen. You want to share and we can discuss?
Yeah, one sec. Okay, so this is one of two protocol RFCs that we have work in progress, and the first one, I'm not sure if it's really a protocol or more of a concept to share and maybe definitely open for the community's input on this one. This one is a concept around a conversation uh, where we have context-driven conversational message exchange, and there's really not much to this other than that, it's built on top of basic message uh, protocol that is already, widely in use. What we try to uh, distinguish here is the concept of a parent thread, and the parent thread being explicitly required in this pattern to to drive short-lived conversations between the connected peers. So, we've seen examples of implementations around chats, but I've seen inconsistent handling of messages when they're associated to parent threads. And so this is more of a profile, I would guess. I don't know, but I'm hoping to share and have the community review this and maybe advise on how to handle this. Here's a link to the pull request. An example of this would be over here. So this is a demo where we have an employer-employee kind of relationship, and we can initiate new threads to engage with the DICCOM-enabled agent. And here I have, if I launch the second thread, I can send a new message. I'll connect my wallet so you guys can see the other end of this conversation. Give me a second. So this is a Credo-enabled agent, and from the holder's perspective, you have a messages feature where you can either resume a previous conversation or start a new one.
So I think the idea here, let me tell you something and then you tell me if I got it wrong, is that by utilizing threads, you can separate and have separate conversations with the same individual. And that way, all the messages about a particular topic are threaded together and not necessarily mixed with all the messages generally.
Correct. And that way, like when a particular thread is done, either party could terminate the conversation, even delete it. But at least you have, better organization of different conversations that happen over time. And some may be short-lived. So, I'm having trouble uploading a document today, and I might get that resolved, and that conversation, I probably won't care about.
Well, and then you could like archive a conversation or something, say I'm done with this, and that way
Yeah.
it's treated differently in the UX than it is an actively going, conversation.
Correct.
A related flow I would bring up is like Slack or Discord threads where you can break off of an individual message to further talk about that specific topic. That definitely seems very related to using a parent thread identifier and specifying that. I want to make sure we don't stamp that out with this approach, if that makes sense.
So kind of like a forking a message within a thread, within a thread, and then creating a sub thread, child thread off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not necessarily with basic message, right? So let's say you're doing like a credential issuance and you can like drop quickly to a chat, resolve it, and then come back up. Is that what you mean, James?
Well, even with chat. So like if you think about Slack, you have your main mm, what's that called? Main channel that you have your discussions in, and then someone can start a thread based off of one of those messages that doesn't send messages back to their original channel, but puts it in a sub thread so that you can have a more specific discussion about a specific message.
Right.
Yeah, something I would like to to add is that we are implementing more or less the same concept as shown here, but what we did in order to make it more generic or to allow other protocols than the basic messages is to organize each thread in a what we call a sub connection or I will say a managed connection. So the idea is that from the main chat you can start a new conversation by creating an invitation to another DITCOM connection. So you will have a separate connection, in technically speaking, per each conversation. That what's good about that is that, well, you can trigger other protocols that are using parent thread ID for other things, like issue credential or maybe, or also you can easily you can easily set up a label and an image for each conversation, because you can use the label or image URL for that, or even the user profile protocol we are implementing in hologram. And so basically what we do is to trigger new connections or bootstrap new connections from a main connection, that will allow you to terminate it, to archive it, or whatever.
Ariel, do you have anything written about that? This is
No,
really
but yeah, I think I should.
so.
I will try to do some or to prepare something about this concept and demonstrate it also with the hologram map. I think I did it last time in the DITCOM user group, but maybe I can do it more. I will say more formally
Well,
in the
I think
next meeting.
I may have missed that. The concept of using a different did for something that the term that we're using over in the DIDCOM spec group at the moment is a session. So you can actually establish a different session that use totally different identifiers, just the way that you're describing. And maybe that was not on the brain, or maybe it didn't come up. But I didn't. But I'm very interested in your use of different identifiers, different DIDs as a session type concept. So if
Yes.
anything that you can send me or write up or represent or something, I would be highly interested in for some of our work there, including applications to post-quantum cryptography within DIDCOM. And so very interested in that.
Okay. I will do my best to have something prepared for next week.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Either here or in the DIDCOM user group.
DIDCOM, yeah.
Either one, I'll be in both. But
Yeah, I know.
but yeah, I'm very curious about that. And in the meantime, we're about out of time. But I dropped that link, Jorge, in the meeting notes, so that so the folks can find that link in order to read what your PR and then discuss. So I really appreciate you bringing that up so that we can discuss.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Keith, yes, so something off the record. The concept of a cryptographic session that is different from sort of the default session is something that's really interesting. It also lets you do things like ratcheting, which we've not really been able to do because we lack the concept of a cryptographic session. So adding a concept, but using more or less the same mechanics that we have, in the sense that here's a did for the new session that I've created specifically for that, actually has some really powerful, interesting applications. So anyway, we are at time. Thanks, folks, for a fantastic meeting. I hope your week is a great one, and we will see you in all the other places that we see you or next week.
Great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.